Considered a brilliant feat of 19th century engineering, the Brooklyn Bridge was a bridge of many firsts. It was the first suspension bridge to use steel for its cable wire. It was the first bridge to use explosives in a dangerous underwater device called a caisson. The Brooklyn Bridge is one of the oldest suspension bridges in the United States, stretching 5,989 feet over the East River, connecting the New York City boroughs of Manhattan and Brooklyn. Upon completion in 1883, it was the longest suspension bridge in the world, the first steel wire suspension bridge, and the first bridge to connect to Long Island. Plans for a crossing between the city of Brooklyn and Lower Manhattan dated back to the early 1800s, when the East River crossing was planned. Brooklyn, with about 400,000 residents, was still more rural than urban. The city of New York had twice as many residents, and the bridge was seen as a solution to overcrowding in Manhattan while spurring development in Brooklyn. The bridge would enable people and goods to cross the East River quickly, regardless of weather conditions. Before the actual work of construction had commenced, however, it became apparent that, in order to more perfectly adapt the structure to its intended uses and to make ample provision for the rapidly increasing volume of inter-urban commerce consequent upon the development and growth of the cities, considerable modification must be made in the original design. The changes were, of course, in the direction of not only a larger and more capacious structure, but also of increased solidity and strength throughout.
The Brooklyn Bridge was actually the first steel wire suspension bridge and the first bridge to connect to Long Island. The structure was a typical suspension bridge, with two towers holding four cables made of steel for the first time. Before, the cables were actually made of iron. The Brooklyn Bridge, which is one of the most known bridges aside from the Golden Gate, is made of iron and steel, and the towers are made of stone. Building the Brooklyn Bridge not only required designing the bridge, but also inventing key materials, their means of manufacture, and the means to put them in place. Wire rope is made from strands of metal precisely organized to move together under load so as to maximize the working strength of the metal. Before the Brooklyn Bridge, the individual wires that make up the rope were made from iron. The towers which hold the cables of the Brooklyn Bridge are made mainly of stone. Four 15-inch cables are the backbone of the bridge. The decision to use steel instead of standard iron wire was a revolutionary proposal. Steel was regarded as a suspect material, not yet proven over time as was iron. In fact, at the time of the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge, the use of steel in any structure in Great Britain was illegal. Steel would be vindicated as a tensile material in the Brooklyn Bridge and, at the same time, as a compression material in the St. Louis Bridge. Before construction even began, the bridge's chief engineer, John A. Roebling, died from tetanus. The project was taken over and seen to its completion by his son, Washington Roebling. 3 years later, Roebling developed a crippling illness called Caisson's disease, known today as the bends. Roebling used a telescope to keep watch over the bridge's progress. He dictated instructions to his wife Emily, who passed on his orders to the workers.
Advantage and disadvantage of the bridge for the specific community. The Brooklyn Bridge has a wide pedestrian walkway open to walkers and cyclists. In the center of the bridge and higher than the automobile lanes. While the bridge has always permitted transit of pedestrians across its span, its rules in allowing thousands to cross take on a special importance in time of difficulty when usual means of crossing the East River have become unavailable. During transit strike by the Transport Workers Union in 1918 and 2005, the bridge was used by people commuting to work, crossing the bridge as a gesture to the effete public. After the September 12 attacks on the World Trade Center, the bridge was used by people in Manhattan to leave the city after subway service was suspended. The massive number of people on the bridge could not have been anticipated by the original designer. The movement of a large number of people on a bridge creates pedestrian oscillation or squeeze. as the crews lift one foot after another, some failing, inevitably in synchronized cadence. This high-density traffic causes a bridge to appear to move irregularly, as happened at opening of the London Millennium Footbridge in 2000. Today, the Brooklyn Bridge is the second busiest bridge in New York City. 134,000 vehicles cross the bridge every day.